Coogs House, the Houston Cougars had their eyes set on a key prospect whose name sounds like one burger chain, but just got recognized by another one.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below. That way you can listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back. It is so good to see you again. Remember, hit subscribe because we're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. The next one of those is at 2,000. That's a big one. And then we're approaching it relatively quickly. We're about to cross the 1950 mark. So hit subscribe. Help us get there and like and comment on the video to let us know you're in that contest. If after today's episode, you just have no idea what to say, it's kind of all over the place. You're just like, I have so many comments. I'm just so many things. I just don't know what to say. Tell us in the comments down below if you like circle or square pizza. All right, so today's episode is going to be looking at a couple of different things, a little bit of bouncing around in some kinds of ways, but not completely discombobulated or disjointed. So bear with me and follow through. First segment, we're going to talk some about Derik Queen, not to be confused with Dairy Queen, recognized by the McDonald's All-American basketball game. Talk some about him, his process, and how Houston is in his top 4, and he has not committed yet. Second, I actually want to talk a little bit. Second segment, I want to talk some about an article that went published, I think it was about a week ago at this point, in the Daily Cougar. Popped up on my timeline. I read it. Student newspaper, support journalism across the board, but obviously student journalism. I want to talk some about enlightenments from that in the athletic budget. And last but not least, as I was listening to the Kelvin Samson radio show, getting ready for this, I had picked a couple quotes, really, especially one story that I really wanted a chance to highlight and talk about how it sheds such great light on the unintentional genius that is Kelvin Sampson. But first, let's talk about a guy that may end up playing for Kelvin in the near future, or that certainly I would like to, and that is Derik Queen. Now, Derik Queen was named to the McDonald's All-American All-Star Game for high school basketball players, but say seniors, but I guess technically it's any high school basketball player. In the last, I guess he just got named Tuesday afternoon, evening, Wednesday, that, a lot of celebration around him and those kinds of things. Derik is originally from Baltimore, the greater Baltimore area, and is playing his high school basketball now at Montverde Academy, the same Montverde with Cooper Flags, the Liam McNeelys of the world, and so on. Number one team in America, that Montverde high school basketball team. They were at the Thanksgiving Hoop Fest up in DFW. I got to watch that one in person. I got to be at that one in person. They played Duncanville at one of the top-ranked public schools in Texas. I was at there as well. That was a fun game to watch. Kyler Edwards' brother is on that team at Duncanville. Anyway, that was a fun game to watch. Derik Queen is really, really talented. As far as player profile goes, first of all, I should point out that the McDonald's All-American Game is some of the best high school players in America every year. You're talking about the top 20-ish kids across the entire country. The alumni list for that game includes like the LeBron Jameses, the Kobe Bryant's, the Dwight Howard's, the top high school prospects year in, year out, Kevin Garnett's, Kevin Durant's, so on and so forth, right? So big deal to be named to that. The most recent to come to Houston to get invited to those kind of things was Jarace Walker. Jarace Walker was a 5-star prospect and so on. I actually don't remember exactly which all-star games they played in. There are different rules, but how many you can participate in as a high school senior at the national level. Anyway, I've actually, now that slips my mind. But the reason I bring up Jarace, and the reason Jarace is a friend of mine, is that fairly similar path as far as playing the same AAU team, and also Team Thrills and Under Armour team up in that Baltimore, Pennsylvania region of the world, and then obviously playing at an academy in Florida. Jarace went to IMG, but the same kind of vein, right? Now, Jarace was a tremendous athlete. I would argue that while Derik Queen is listed at 6'10", weight varies on a couple of things, but he's a big, strong guy. He doesn't have the same explosiveness or bounce maybe that Jarace has, and that's not to say that he doesn't. Jarace was just a really good athlete. But I do weirdly think that Derik Queen is a more polished basketball player, actually. He's got great footwork, great ball skills for a guy that size, a great job of dribbling through traffic. Frankly, one of their press breaks, you could see them against Duncanville, is just getting him the ball in the middle of the lane because, Duncanville was trapping Cooper Flag or whatever. And he could just take the ball up the middle because he dribbles the ball well enough, doesn't turn it over dribbling. He's currently averaging 13.7 points and 7 rebounds per game for Montverde. I would point out that this is an all-star type team that he already plays on at Montverde, right? The Monstars of high school basketball right now in America. Top-ranked team across multiple outlets. It's an everybody eats kind of team. They all play relatively equal minutes in a way it can almost be, disheartening to fans coming there to watch a couple key guys in the game. Like, they're only going to split time evenly because they're going to run everyone else out of the gym as they're currently assembled. Now, the question on the internet became, in his top 4, Houston is almost the odd fit. I mean, he's from Baltimore, so Maryland is on there because it's close to home. He also has Indiana on there. Now, there's 2 other guys in the Montverde starting 5 that are committed to Indiana. And so there's some thought there that may be a pro and a con. That may be just why it's in the top 4 and so on. Kansas, Indiana, and Kansas, both blue bloods of Mid-America. And then Houston. And Houston sticks out. And I would actually argue that Houston, if you look at the last 4 years, has put themselves into these types of top 4s more often than not because they've been the kind of program the last 4 years that deserves it. Houston currently has 6 guys in the NBA from the University of Houston in the Kelvin Samson era. The unique thing to that is that all 6 have been drafted in the last, or drafted or taken in the NBA, I guess, as an undrafted free agent that signs a contract in the last 4 years. Now, obviously, like Jarace Walker was a lotto pick. Marcus Sasser and Quentin Grimes, both first-round picks. And I would argue that I would like to claim Daniel House as well, even though he was a little bit older and he did transfer, but he started here. He started, right? A lot of different things about that, though, in the last 4-year window scream blue blood, just like Kansas, just like Indiana, etc. For instance, that's just one less that's one more NBA pro than Indiana. Houston's got 4 guys in the G League. Indiana has 3 guys in the G League. Houston has a total of 24 guys currently playing international basketball or in the NBA or international or domestically. Indiana's got a little bit more, but they've got guys drafted as far back as like 2008 and Eric Gordon in the NBA, right? So the window for them is much longer, but this recent Houston back to dominant, back to national relevance, back to the Kelvin Sampson well-built pro, or up to that level of the Kelvin Sampson well-built program, Houston's matched more or less what Indiana's done in the last 15 years in the last 4 years, right? Maryland, it may be home for Derik Queen, but he's shown, frankly, that he'll leave home for high school. So I don't know why we should assume that he'll stay home for college. I think that's more to play nice with the homeschool a little bit. It's also got Under Armour ties and those kinds of things, and he's a Team Under Armour kid there with Team Thrill. They have a handful of NBA players. No one's been drafted since 2021. That was the younger Wiggins brother, and that didn't really work out. They got 2 guys in the G League, and I guess they have a bunch of guys playing internationally. I did not realize there were 28 international players, but a lot of their success comes to the 20 teens. Again, Kelvin Samson's built this Houston program in the last 4 years. Kansas, obviously, blue blood has the most, but I would point out that in the same 4-year window we're talking about with Houston and Kelvin Sampson, their numbers are relatively similar. Kansas has 5 guys drafted or 5 guys in the NBA from the University of Kansas, left the University of Kansas in the last 4 years, just 2 guys in the G League. And while they have a bunch of other guys in the NBA, if you're looking at where the programs are present tense, modern, right now, 2024, the last 4 years, I think Houston has demonstrated that they're on par. They're up to snuff. They are just as much of a developmental place for NBA talent as the Kansas of the world. Yes, you can go back to like 2012 or something, but that's not going to help you in the immediate present tense in the sense, right? Because the program you're signing up for, the program you're going to as a high school senior, is the present version of it, not the 2012 version of it, not 2008 version of it. And so I think Houston's got as good a shot from that perspective as any here. Now, I don't have inside. I don't talk to Derik, although Derik, if you want to DM me, A, we can keep it anonymous, and B, if you want to come on the show, we'll talk there too. But people are like discrediting Houston because it's not home and it's not the program, it's not the blue blood that Kansas is or whatever. And I would point out that in the last 4 years, they have been every bit as successful at turning guys into pro, sending guys in the NBA. And Derik has shown he'll leave home before. And so I think Houston's in this. I say Houston keeps running this. And frankly, adding Derik Queen to the couple guys that already got signed in the 2024 class would really, really, really to put that class over the top for Houston's second year in the Big 12. Now, Houston's got other things going their way as they move into the Big 12, including some financial stuff that I want to give credit to the Cougar for writing about. But first, if we're going to talk about building a fine-tuned machine like Houston is doing on the basketball courts, then you got to make sure that you go to ebaymotors.com to do that with your finely tuned, high-powered machine, because passion, drive, and patience are what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because eBay Motors, you're going to burn rubber, but not cash. All the parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. It's eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so there was an article. I should probably credit the person who wrote it too for the Daily Cougar the other day. But Daily Cougar, if you're under a rock, or you're a prospective person, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, is the student newspaper on campus. Jordan Navarro and Robert De La Garza, two students that write for it, noticed something in the athletic budget and dug a little deeper and actually wrote about it and talked to Pesman about it. And I think it's interesting to see that a headline that almost sounds like a bad thing actually is demonstrating, to me, as I read this, a positive trend for the University of Houston and the athletic department and the budget. Now, student newspaper reports that there's going to be a $1.5 million budget decrease in the athletic budget from the Student Fee Advisory Committee's base funding. That means the fees that students are paying, and they're taking $1.5 million less out of that pot to give directly to athletics. And I think the headline, the insinuation, and frankly, the thing that probably led these two students to go dive into this a little bit deeper kind of makes you think, like, wait a second, that sounds like bad news bears. And frankly, that sounds like the kind of steps backward that we don't want to be taking, especially as we step ourselves into the Big 12. Stepping backwards in the Big 12 would be a big, big problem, right? We know we have an uphill climb to get to the same kind of, we're building new facilities, and our NIL programs are still developing and growing, and we're still trying to pull things up. Taking money out sounds like a bad thing. However, the truth is that this is kind of the trickle-down effect of all of that Big 12 money coming into play. This should be expected. And frankly, Pesman told the students, it sounds like, that this is kind of getting them on par with other Big 12 schools, because to this point, Houston's relied on that money from the student fees much more so than their Big 12 counterparts. And now being able to take away $1.5 million from the athletic sliver of that pie implies that A, athletics is finding their money elsewhere. We'll get into that in a second. And B, Houston can now use that money to other parts of campus, right? Now, that's what you talk about when you talk about building a big university with research departments and things like that. And this is how athletics continue. We talk about athletics being the front porch of university, but it's also, like, frankly, on the front porch, you've got those like columns and beams that keep the house together. I mean, this is athletics giving back to the university, and this is why we've been saying to build up the athletic program. It'll fund the rest of the school. But you see this because of the Big 12 money coming in and other revenue streams having such dramatic increases with the move to the Big 12, Pesimo is saying that you can see a 250 to 300% revenue increase across all of these other various revenue streams, tickets, frankly, sodas and hot dogs, merchandise, but also things like TV deals and all kinds of different things that are tied to athletics are going up, 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 that they no longer need to use as much of this student fee pie, if we're talking about pieces of pie in a pie chart, right? Now, I will say that they're not lowering that number to zero. Houston still does need to take a chunk of money out of that to keep things moving and functioning and working well as they continue to fine tune this machine. And Houston is still on the short list of schools in the Big 12 that are using a lot more than others. Now, it's not as much, it won't be as dramatically much more as it was in the 2023-24 school year moving forward, but it certainly still will be more than the average. And so the goal is actually going to be to continue to lower that number, to continue to have athletics take less and less out of that pot, because that means that all of those other revenue streams for athletics are working and growing and growing and growing. And the goal would be to, like many other big time programs, to have a completely self-sufficient, not even needing any of those extra dollars type of program across all of athletics. And then the goal would be to really have it start turning profits and revenues and things like that. And I know that that sounds silly because we talk about like how much more football tickets cost and how, frankly, we're all paying the $12.99 for ESPN Plus to watch a lot of these basketball games, and I would recommend the Disney ESPN Plus bundle with Hulu, because that way with my 7-month-old we can like turn on the Disney songs in the background, and it's a fun time. He likes Un Poco Loco, right? Fun song. But more realistically, or more to the point here, we consider and talk about how things are getting more expensive, because they are. They really are. There's concrete evidence to say they are. However, while it's getting more expensive for you and I, as long as they make the product the kind of blue blood product that we're paying for, that's just kind of the cost of doing business. Now, the complaint that can come in if you say we're paying ABC and we're only getting XYZ, or, we're paying blue blood prices and getting, mid-major output still. Where's the disconnect? Why is that happening? That down the road could be an absolutely valid complaint, right? However, these numbers indicate that they're going to continue to make this more of a financially big time program. And I feel confident in the people, whether it's Fritz, Sampson, whomever, that they've got in charge here, that they can kind of get this thing moving, right? And get this thing moving into that big time program. Because as we've said throughout the entire process since Houston got the Big 12 nod a couple years ago at this point, Houston's got the talent and the athletes to be a big time athletic program in their backyard. It's always been about the opportunity. Now the opportunity is here. The money's moving around. It's getting more expensive. But this is what we asked for. And this we're getting. And frankly, kudos to the student newspaper for pointing out how this is trickling into helping, helping out the rest of the academic side of campus, because that money can now get reallocated to science equipment, to labs, to bringing in speakers, bringing in presenters, right? Those kinds of things, whatever the students want, the student fees want to get divvied up to. There's a committee for that. They spoke to people on the committee in the article. I'd recommend go read it. They can now use that money, another $1.5 million that they did not have this past budget. That's important. Now, speaking of important things, coming off of a big win in Provo, Utah, Kelvin Sampson spoke on the radio, or spoke to Jeremy Branham at J Bar M, the barbecue joint. And outside of some jokes, he had some important things to say. And so I want to talk about that in the third segment, because I always love talking about the things Kelvin Sampson has to say. Now, I think it's interesting that, first of all, the quote that everyone taking away from this, I should start off with, is very much I had the same kind of Big 12 idea from the last segment. And in a passioned, it was not the last thing he said, but it was the last important thing it felt like he said. Passion-filled moment from this 30 minutes on the radio. Samson was talking about the crowds, and it was like, trust me, like Fog Allen is going to be a different kind of beast, and Ames, Iowa was a great experience, and Fort Worth was a great experience, and Norman's going to be a great experience, and Waco is going to be a great experience, and these kinds of road trips, and Provo was a great experience, frankly, and these kinds of road trips are just like the kinds of things you sign up for, that tingly feeling you get when you're playing and coaching and cheering in these kinds of atmospheres, the do or die with every single possession, and every possession feels like a football possession because every basket feels like a touchdown, and those kinds of like he was drawing these pictures that shaped all that, right? And then the quote that's gone viral already in the 2 hours since, and not even 2 hours since, it didn't take me long, in the time sense, is, we didn't crash this party. We get invited. That means we belong. He was talking about Houston, the atmosphere in the Fertitta Center, the atmosphere surrounding the program, and how really, especially in terms of his basketball program, Houston belongs in the same conversation as all of those other big dogs, all those other environments, all those other legendary places to play. There's no reason it's not us. Now, that's the viral quote, and that's the one that I think afterwards you like could very much hear the audience. I'm on the radio, I'm not watching, right? But people are like, I'd run through a wall right now. And I think Samson, you could hear him off mic because someone else's mic picked it up, was like, I'm ready to go coach a game right now, right? Right? And all that kind of stuff. That's the viral quote. I think that's very deservedly so. It's fun, it's energetic, especially before a blackout game against Kansas State and Jerome Tang this weekend. That's a big time quote, right? It's a big time pull. I thought there were other quotes though to pull out of this that were maybe not as like movie feeling, but certainly important. I really like what Coach had to say, and it was too long to read a single quote on, or too long for me to have been dictating as I'm typing it what I wanted to say. But he had a long bit about knowing the guys you're coaching, and knowing how much, frankly, coaching and hard coaching, and how much you can dig into a guy, and how you got to build that relationship so they know you're just coaching them hard, you're not criticizing them too much. It's about improving them as a basketball player, not critiquing them as a person or anything bigger than that. But basketball is a big deal, so it is going to be serious. It is going to be passion filled. He had a big rant on that, and I think is interesting because he so clearly cares deeply about these kids. Whether it's the highs of watching him rejoice. I mean, there are pictures and videos of him at different players' weddings and things like that. The highs of seeing them graduate last spring. I mean, authenticity in that, or the lows. I mean, there have been lows in this program recently. Behind me on the green screen deal here, we have a 32 in a black circle because unfortunately Reggie Chaney did pass away, and that was a really sad moment for the program as a whole. I mean, Reggie embodied this program and so many things that he did. And he was finally going to get a chance to live out his dream, and that was a really sad story. I mean, as sad as any in college basketball, really, in a long time. Yeah, it was a really hard story, and we've seen Samson in those lows. We've seen Samson's highs and lows, and how much he has invested emotionally in really each of these kids. They're college kids, right? And how he described that connection, and having to build that connection before you can go off on that tirade about how you're in the wrong spot in the help side defense, and going off and breaking a foot off and doing all those kinds of things. You've got to develop that. Hearing him articulate that, I think, was expected. I don't mean to say I didn't see it coming or couldn't have seen it coming, but it was fascinating. And I know I get nerded out about that because my day job being teacher and coach. I do coach by day, and I strive to do that in my own, but no one's as good at it as Samson is, right? But it was interesting to hear him talk about. The thing I want to run with here, though, we talked about the other day, before the Texas Tech game, Jamal Shead had been having a couple games of foul trouble. Houston needed a win. They'd lost a couple road games to the Big 12, and they needed a win to honestly kind of get back on track because things were could have gone off the rails. And in a moment before, like in the more casual parts of pregame, Samson pulled Jamal Shead aside and told him he loved him. Right? Like of all the things to tell a guy, told him he loved him. Jamal Shead goes out and has 29 points, career high, knocks Texas Tech out. It's just a moment that Samson understands innately, it feels like, where he's like, hey, I need to go talk to this guy and make sure he's having a good day. And he goes, make sure he's having a good day. And then, boom, Jamal Shead puts on a all Big 12 player of the week type of performance. And Houston wins the one they had to have. Before going to Provo, he said that he talked to LJ Cryer. And he walked up to LJ Cryer and, we talked to him about the offense they're running and the this and that. And he's like, but at some point, LJ, you got to go take the ball and make a play. Right? Now, it's a very different conversation. LJ and Jamal are very different kids. But LJ got it turned back around in a way that we haven't seen in a couple weeks at this point. LJ was 5-9 from 3, 23 points, road warrior, some dagger-type shots. He was all over the floor on defense, too, forcing a jump ball and a rebound that he dove on the floor for. Clearly sparked, clearly built up by, clearly ready to play because of whatever message he got before. And in this radio moment, we heard from Samson what that was. It was, hey, we need you to make a play. We need you. We need you to make a play. Go do it. And that's what he did. And it's just interesting to me as we continue to learn more about Samson a decade into this, right? And frankly, as he shares more of it a decade into this, the program is established now, right? The machine is built, and now we're just continuing to fine tune it, continuing to oil it, continue to grow it, right? That he's got this innate sense of when to find those guys, when to go to J1, give him a pat on the butt and say, hey man, here's the deal. He knows how to go find Javier Francis or how to talk to Javier all of last year about, like, I know he's talented. I know he's coming. It's a particularly unique situation that he's watching these really talented bigs in front of him. But when it's his turn, he's going to rise. And then this year, watch him get over 2 blocks a game. Like, those kinds of things we can take for granted so easily because Samson does them so well and so often. But having the presence of mind to know exactly what the team needs, exactly who needs the talking to, and exactly what that talking to is. It's not normal. It's not common. It's what makes Kelvin Samson a Hall of Famer, more so than the defense, more so than the Final Four appearances in his past coaching spots, and I guess here's across the board. It's all of this like mental game he plays that just, I don't mean to say it's not conscious. I don't mean to diminish it and say that he's not thinking about it, but it just seems natural. And it's really, really cool to watch. And it's really cool to have on our campus. And it's really, really cool to see coaching the number 4 team in the country. Now, he's really good with words. I'm working on mine. That's why we're talking for 30 minutes every day here at Locked On Cougs. So hit subscribe. Thank you for making us your first listen in the morning. We're back again tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about previewing Kansas State. Kansas State game this weekend's a big one. It's a fun one. Jerome Tang comes back to the Houston area in a fun kind of way. So we got to talk about that one tomorrow. The little X's and O's breakdown, personnel, and all that kind of fun stuff on Friday's episode. Thank you all so much for being Locked On Cougs, your first listen of the day. Second listen, go check out Locked On College Basketball to talk about all things college hoops across the country. Other top 10 teams went down. Kansas State got in an interesting one with Iowa State as well. They're breaking all those kind of things down, so go check them out. Locked On Cougs is a private Locked On podcast. Remember, this is your team, our Cougs. Our number 4 Coug, Kelvin Sampson's Cougs, every day. Go Cougs.